The Café of Hope, extended version. Every morning without fail, Julian sat at the corner table of the little café on Bishop's Lane, a weathered notebook open before him. His pen hovered, unmoving in his hand, as though waiting for inspiration to strike like lightning. The café was a refuge, an island of warmth and soft jazz amid the cold rush of city life. Its windows were always fogged slightly with condensation, its wooden tables worn smooth by years of quiet conversations and clinking mugs. Julian was a struggling novelist, a dreamer with a mind full of stories and a heart that wore its hope thin with each blank page. For months, years even, he had come here, ordering the same black coffee, stirring it absent-mindedly, his thoughts drifting like the steam rising from the cup. The words always danced just beyond reach, fluttering like shadows at the edge of his vision, slipping between his fingers the moment he tried to grasp them. One particularly unremarkable morning, a fine drizzle had been falling since dawn, painting the pavement slick and gleaming. Umbrellas bobbed past the window like strange black blossoms. Julian sat, staring at the same half-finished sentence he had written the day before. Frustration gnawed at him. With a sigh, he closed the notebook and buttoned up his coat, preparing to leave empty-handed once again. That morning, the café was more crowded than usual. The regular barista, an older man with a wry smile and a tendency to recommend obscure Russian authors, had called in sick. In his place stood a new face. A young woman with chestnut hair braided loosely down her back and green eyes full of quiet curiosity. "Good morning," she greeted him brightly, her voice carrying a soft, melodic lilt. "What can I get started for you?" "Black coffee, please," Julian mumbled, not looking up from his worn notebook tucked protectively under his arm. She nodded, crafting the cup with practiced ease. Then, just before handing it over, she scribbled something on the sleeve with a pen. Julian didn't notice. He retreated to his usual seat by the window, the world outside smudged by rain. Only when the warmth of the cup seeped through his fingers did he glance down. There, scrawled in neat handwriting, was a quote. "Every great story begins with a single word." Dare to write it? Julian blinked. For a moment, something loosened in his chest. He looked up, searching for the mysterious barista, hoping to meet her gaze. She caught his eyes and offered a gentle smile, one that felt like she already knew what the morning had just become. For the first time in weeks, Julian opened his notebook again, heart a little lighter. And on the first blank page, he wrote a single word. Days turned to weeks. The rainy morning that sparked the change remained vivid in Julian's mind. The barista, whose name he soon learned was Laya, had become the quiet architect of his mornings. Each day, she scribbled a different quote on his coffee cup. Lines from poets lost to time, fragments of philosophy, tiny bursts of encouragement. Sometimes just notes like, "Keep going, you're closer than you think." Julian's writing began to shift. The words he once hunted now flowed like a river unblocked. Characters who had once sat stubbornly on the page now leapt to life, vivid and breathing. Plot lines wove themselves with surprising clarity, as if they'd only been waiting for him to believe in them again. The café became his crucible, a quiet forge for dreams too fragile to survive elsewhere. Laya's presence, though subtle, became integral to his ritual, like the sunlight through the windows, or the jazz humming from the corner speakers. One morning, as spring edged into summer, Julian lingered longer at the counter. His notebook was clutched tightly, pages filled with fresh chapters and unbroken streaks of inspiration. His cheeks held a faint flush, the glow of quiet victory. "You've been on fire lately," Laya said, handing him his usual. On the sleeve, a new quote waited, "Creation is courage made visible." Julian smiled, a real smile this time, one that reached his eyes for the first time in a long while. It's because of you, he admitted. Your quotes, your timing. It's strange to say that a cup of coffee and a few words changed my life, but they did. Laya tilted her head, braids slipping forward as she shrugged modestly. Sometimes all it takes is a little spark. Everyone needs someone, or something, to believe in them. That day, they talked. Not the small talk of customer and barista, but truly talked. Julian learned that Laya was an artist, that the small watercolor paintings hanging behind the counter were her creations. She painted dreams the way he tried to write them. They spoke of books and art and the strange ache of wanting to create something that mattered. Their bond deepened in the quiet way real connections do, gently, without fanfare. They became confidants, collaborators of the heart. Their mornings intertwined until it was hard to remember how they had once existed apart. Summer ripened. The trees lining Bishop's Lane grew lush, their leaves shimmering in the golden light. The cafe's windows were often flung open, letting in birdsong and breeze. Julian's confidence had blossomed. He even submitted the first few chapters of his novel to a publisher. Then one rainy afternoon, much like the one that had started it all, the cafe was empty. Chairs were turned up, the espresso machine silent. Outside, raindrops traced rivers down the windows. Laya sat across from Julian, both of them nursing the last of their drinks. The hush between them was warm, like the final note of a song lingering in the air. I never asked you, Julian said softly, why you started writing those quotes on cups. Laya hesitated, brushing her braid back over her shoulder. I used to think words were just words. Easy to throw away. But once, during a rough patch, someone gave me a quote. Just a stranger. It stayed with me, like a lifeline I didn't know I needed. I guess I wanted to pass that on. Julian reached across the table, fingers grazing hers. The contact was soft but sure. You gave me more than words, he said. You gave me belief, hope. You reminded me that stories are worth chasing. She smiled, eyes glistening. Maybe that's our story, too. That night, Julian wrote. Not for a publisher, not for validation, but for love. He wrote of a cafe where rain whispered secrets, where two souls found each other between the lines, daring to leap from loneliness into something greater.